Only a week after Luigi de Guzman lost, we already have another qualifier for the 2023 Tournament of Champions, David Sibley. Ken Jennings' instruction was, our 2-game champion Michael Mickes shared with us at the end of Friday's show that his earliest memories of Jeopardy are watching it on his grandmother Eleanor's lap. She may not be here to see his wins, but Michael believes she's looking down and smiling at his success. Now I have to explain. Jeopardy uploaded a dream fulfilled in the overheard on set in Friday's game. Ken noted Michael seemed emotional after both of his wins. That's when he explained about his grandmother. I would have imagined Michael mentioning it in either anecdote, though. Whatever the case, I'm glad to see Michael playing that much more. Let's see how proud he makes his grandmother in this episode. David got the first daily double. He made it a true daily double, got it right, and went to $3,600. The mini anecdotal interviews are all interesting. David talked about switching careers from a chemist to a priest. He actually does kind of look like a teacher. Sue talked about splurging for her big Jeopardy appearance. I like her aesthetic and her smile. And since Michael believes his grandmother is smiling at his success, I love the positivity in this game. Ken asked if appearing on the show alone was emotional. He answered, it's obviously an emotional roller coaster. Everything about Jeopardy is an emotional roller coaster. Like you mentioned at the top of the show, right? Some of my earliest memories are of sitting on her lap watching game shows just like this. So actually probably watching her streak now that I think about it at that age. Ken ended by telling him he loves the multi-generational viewing of the show between him and his grandma. Sue ended the first round winning $200 and seemed to admire just being on the board. Michael was in second place at $6,000 and David was in late at $9,400. Mike got the first daily double in Double Jeopardy, risked $2,000, unfortunately answered wrong, and went down to $5,600. I find it crazy that the answer was Mont Blanc when at this time last year, Mont Blanc was the answer on Matt Amodio's 24th game. Matt answered it correctly even though Caroline Mickes climbed around the Mont Blanc.
I also found it interesting that Mont Blanc was one of the answers.
Matt.
What's Mont Blanc?
That's correct.
My interest 1,000?
Matt answered it correctly, yet Caroline Mickes climbed around the Mont Blanc.
You've climbed Kilimanjaro, you've climbed around Mont Blanc.
Funny how that works.
Even more crazy, Caroline Mickes and Michael Mickes almost had the same last name.
He got both daily doubles.
David got the second daily double in Double Jeopardy 30 seconds later. He wagered $4,000, got it right, and went to $15,800. I like how he wagered $4,000 and the question starts off in the big four. Something I do need to address is when the question isn't exactly accurate. Thanks to Stranger Things, her in 1985 running up that hill re-entered the charts in 2022. This is technically true. However, the fans watching the show don't care much for the song as they care about how it was used in the song and the show it was used in. Essentially, it's on the charts for the wrong reasons. I knew about the song in 2020 thanks to Meg Myers, so I heard it before it was cool, I guess. Now I can't listen to either version. And since Friends was an entire category in the previous round referring to the show, it begs the question, why are two of the most overrated shows ever mentioned in this episode? Michael ended Double Jeopardy winning $8,400. David was in a runaway lead at $21,800, and Sue was in third place at $1,400. No! The final Jeopardy category was magazines. The question was, a now annual issue of this magazine was inspired by the high society parties of Caroline Astor, whose ballroom fit about 400 people. I'm guessing the only magazine I know, Tiger Beat. None of the contestants answered correctly. The answer was actually Forbes. Huh. I like how Sue still smiles after she went down to $1. Meanwhile, Michael only risked $1. David didn't risk anything, leaving his final score at $21,800 and won that game. Congratulations to Michael. Since he mentioned his grandmother looking down and smiling at his success, I kind of wanted him to win. Regardless, you made your grandmother very proud. Thank you. We'll see David again tomorrow. The overheard on set was titled, Nothing Prepares You for Winning at Jeopardy. Has anything in your pastoral or ecclesiastical training prepared you for this moment? David answered, no, absolutely not. The rest of the conversation was just connecting playing Jeopardy to being a priest. We'll see David again tomorrow. Ken Jennings' instruction of the next game was, we kicked off the week with the runaway game for our new champion, David Sibley, who came up with the correct response to 2 daily doubles to help lock in his win today. David got the first daily double, wagered $1,000, got it right, and went to $1,200. There seemed to be a TV theme in the mini anecdotal interviews, I guess. Ken asked Charlotte if she stayed in a house we'd recognize. She answered, yes, a very famous house. It's part of our family here. I'm from Essex County, New Jersey, and when my parents moved to the area over 30 years ago, they were looking for a new place. The estate agent took them to a residential street in North Caldwell, a very nice Italianate-style bungalow. My parents at the last minute decided to pass, but a couple of decades later, or a decade or so later, it became the House of the Sopranos, so I'm very much dodged a bullet in keeping my private life private. Nick's wrestling career involved him being head coach of the top mixed martial arts team in all of India. I wonder if that was televised. David's anecdote was telling his parents he can answer the Jeopardy questions only because he watched it half an hour before on a different station. Even though David's method was a joke, it actually does help to listen to the questions and answers repeatedly. That's one of the reasons I enjoy doing these videos. David entered the first round winning $8,000. Charlotte was rather close at $6,600, and Nick was in the red at negative $200. Speaking of why I enjoy doing these videos, this question begins on June 17th, 1972, as Woodward fumbled for the receiver and snapped awake. Looking at the date, I thought this would have been a similar question to the final Jeopardy round when Megan Walks press defeated Erica Hosick and came up a few days later. The answer was All the President's Men, and yes, it's about the Watergate scandal, Nixon's presidency. Charlotte got the first daily double in Double Jeopardy, wagered $3,000, got it right, and went to $10,200. In December 1882, Edward Johnson, a VP under Thomas Edison, became the first person to put electric lights on this. The answer was, what is a Christmas tree? It's too early for Christmas, and at the time this episode aired, Christmas trees were already being sold at the mall for a week in my area. Oh my god. And as we're recording this, they're now selling Christmas candy at grocery stores. He got both daily doubles. David got the second daily double in Double Jeopardy, wagered $4,000, and it was obvious. This American found variable stars in the Andromeda Nebula, helping invigorate its distance from Earth and getting renamed a galaxy. Who was Edwin Hubble? That took him to $18,800. And David ended Double Jeopardy winning $22,200, taking a deep breath after he put his buzzer down. Charlotte was in second place at $10,200, and Nick was in third place at $2,600. The final Jeopardy category was world airports. The question was, Africa's two busiest passenger airports are in these two countries. It's an 8-hour flight between them. Since they're Africa's busiest, the countries I could think of would be popular or famous countries in Africa. I don't know the answer. The answer was Egypt and South Africa. That's correct. Airports serving Cairo and Johannesburg. Huh. That was a lot more obvious than I thought. Nick and David answered correctly. For the second game in a row, David didn't risk anything, leaving his score at $22,400. Kind of anticlimactic for a runaway. He's now at a 2-day total of $44,200, so the numbers are reversed than his final score. Canogenic destruction of the next game was, it's been a good week so far for our champion, the Reverend David Sibley, who, as a kid, told his parents that he thought he could beat anyone at Jeopardy. Well, so far his prediction has been right on the mark. He has dominated both of his games. None of his challengers were in a position to catch him going into Final Jeopardy. Let's see how much pressure Sam and Emily can put on the champ today. His first two games were runaways, and that's impressive. And I like how he matches the background from this stage in season 37. There were two instances when David gave the names of two different people who don't go by a single stage name. The category was one named Rockstars, so I'm confused how David repeated the mistake. Regardless, I feel bad that he didn't catch on to the category. On Friday the 13th of October, 1307, King Philip IV of France ordered the arrest of this military group. After no one buzzed in to answer the Templar, Ken said we're getting rid of the hard ones. This should have aired Thursday the 13th of October 2022. I hope to have this video done by then too. In 1914, 19-year-old Sir Gavrilo Princip triggered World War I by assassinating this man. The answer was obviously Franz Ferdinand. What I didn't know until watching this episode was Gavrilo Princip was only 19. That's one of the most insane things I found out about anything. The First World War and its causes that led to the Second World War were all caused by the actions of a 19-year-old. I also just found out Franz Ferdinand's the name of a band. Lucky, yes, so lucky. Emily got the first daily double. She made it a true daily double, got it right, and went to $6,000. Great job. Speaking of Emily, I find it funny how her nickname is Grandma. I can imagine all the interactions if she was called that in public. I wonder if her grandma ever called her Grandma. Or even her mother. Sam entered the first round winning $2,600. David was in third place at $2,200, and Emily was only at $7,600. Looks like this is it for David. Mississippi and South Carolina in 1952. The answer was Audley Stevenson, which no one buzzed in to answer. Audley Stevenson was also the question in the final Jeopardy round in Amy Schneider's 26th game. I looked up Stevenson out of boredom, and it obviously paid off since I knew the answer. David got the first daily double in Double Jeopardy, wagered $2,000, got it right, and took the lead at $9,000. I guess I spoke too soon.
He got both daily doubles.
David got the second daily double in Double Jeopardy, wagered $2,000 again, got it right, and went to $14,600. Alice Joy Miller's The White Cliffs, a prose poem about World War I and World War II, mentions this town in its third lane. There was another question about World War I. The answer was Dover. Salmon in Double Jeopardy winning $7,800. Emily was in second place at $8,800, and David was in lead at $14,600. David was in third place in the previous round and didn't make it a runaway game this time. The final Jeopardy category was World Rivers. The question was, these two rivers share the names of countries, end with the same four letters, and both join up with the Parana River. I have no idea. Actually, my guesses are Guada and Mala. None of the contestants answered correctly. David was in the right continent. The Paraná is the second largest river in South America. This is Paraguay and Uruguay. David risked $3,001, fair wager, and went down to $11,599, and is at a 3-day total of $55,799. Content instruction of the next game was, our champion David Sibley has done it again, securing in his third game his third Jeopardy win. But unlike his first two wins, it was not a runaway. Perhaps that's why he's bringing out the big guns in the form of a clerical collar. I actually thought Ken was going to say, but unlike his first two wins, he actually wagered something at Final Jeopardy. Ken mentioned the wardrobe change. I wonder why he didn't when Luigi de Guzman wore a polo shirt, or when Andrew he wore a sweater. The audience laughed. Then Ken introduced Mara and Solani. All three contestants got a daily double. Mara got the first daily double after answering the first question. She made it a true daily double, got it right, and went to $2,000. On October 3rd, 1990, this communist country in Europe lost its direction after reunification. The answer was East Germany, and Jeopardy aired this only 4 days before October 3rd, its 32nd anniversary. That would have been an awesome and subtle way of celebrating the loss of a communist regime. There's no way I'm going to upload this before October 3rd. Moira's not the first person in her family to appear on Jeopardy. Ken asked if her mom was on the show. Yes, she was. Back in the early 90s, she was on the show. So I was 8 years old, and my mother unfortunately finished third, but she won the original Nintendo, and a year's supply of ice cream. As an 8-year-old, I was very excited for her. Ken ended by telling her, I don't know who won first place, but a year's supply of ice cream is close to perfect. Since Mara and her mom won an original Nintendo, I can only imagine she won the Nintendo Entertainment System. Since it was mentioned this was the early 90s, how is not a Super Nintendo if the console was released in 1991? So a Nintendo and a year's worth of ice cream. What did the second place contestant win? And how much is a year's worth of ice cream? I always feel obligated to root for people like Maura in game shows. Meanwhile, David plans to use his winnings to start a college fund for his daughter, who's 11 months old. I'm sure she'll be excited to know David was on Jeopardy when she turns 8. David ended the first round winning $6,400. Maura was in second place at $4,400, and Sonali was in third place at $2,000. I like how the scores add up to David's score. The narrator of the yellow wallpaper is on a rest cure for a hysterical tendency, interpreted as this, PPD for short. The answer was postpartum depression. I'm so glad one of my literature courses introduced me to psychological realism. Karana says, a ship looks like a small shell afloat on the sea in this kid's classic by Scott Odell. I felt bad for Maura. She answered, what is Island of the Blue Dolphin when it was Island of the Blue Dolphins, plural. David got the first daily double in Double Jeopardy, wagered $3,500, got it right, and went to $15,100. Sonali and Maura were tied at $5,200 when Sonali got the second daily double in Double Jeopardy. Sonali risked $2,000, unfortunately answered wrong, and went down to $3,200. Nobody answered the last question in Double Jeopardy. David made it another runaway at $22,300, and he took a deep breath again. Maura and Sonali were tied at $4,800. I guess Ryan's ties after the other rounds are rubbing off. The final Jeopardy category was innovations. The question was, seen by a worldwide audience in 1970, black pentagons were added to these to help viewers follow them better on TV. I immediately guessed closed captions until I saw pentagons. I was thinking, what's something on a television that has pentagons? The answer was soccer balls in the 1970 World Cup. Should have waited until November to air this clue. Here's a little history lesson. Color TV was common in America by 1970, following more than half a decade of black and white TV sets. By 1966, only a decade after 1/3 of Americans had a television set, studios decided to film in color. This was not the case for the rest of the world. I know Mexico had plenty of color films in the 1950s and 60s. Meanwhile, I've seen black and white clips of Australian TV for the 1970s. There was also another contestant, Dimitri Aspesos, who mentioned his mum was on a Greek game show in the 1960s, and it was in black and white. I don't know how early or how late in the 1960s it was. So, since the rest of the world had yet to adapt to color TV, pentagons were added to help see them for the rest of the world. How would that have worked out for other sports like baseball or tennis, where the ball is smaller? For the second game in a row, none of the contestants answered correctly. Notice all their wagers. Sonali and David only bet $1. I've never seen that before, and Maura didn't wager anything. This is the lowest bet from all 3 contestants in the show's history. So yeah, that's 2 rare occurrences. 2 games in a row when none of the contestants answered correctly, and all 3 contestants almost bet 0. After David's wager was revealed, Ken told him slightly more than your usual 0. His final score was $22,299 and is at a 4-day total of $78,098. Maura finished in 2nd place. Since her mom finished in 3rd, maybe Maura has a daughter who could come on the show and win. I have to talk about David's wagers. I don't see him going any further, seeing how he wagers. All it'll take is another game to not be a runaway, and one of his challengers will bet much higher than David. Sorry, David. I mean, 4 wins is still good. So he has that going for him. The overheard on set was titled, "Soccer Balls, What's Up With Them?" Ken told David he was halfway there. He knows a sports item. David answered, "I listened to your executive producer's podcast. I should have known this." Ken asked, "Are you a soccer guy?" David answers, "I am, yeah." Then they talk about how soccer balls didn't have the familiar black and white checkerboard design until the 1970s. Then talked about a scene from Bed Knobs and Broomsticks where they had the correct soccer ball look. The video ends in Ken telling David that the college fund that he has for his daughter is starting to look good. This game is crucial for David. Today he'll secure a spot in the Tournament of Champions. We'll see if I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong. Ken Jennings' introduction was, our champion David Sibley shared yesterday that he wants the world for his young daughter, and in fact plans to start a college fund for her with his Jeopardy winnings. Well, after 4 wins and over $78,000, that fund is off to a great start. Can he add to today with another win and secure a spot in the 2023 Tournament of Champions? Or will it be Pam or Cris who ends the week with us as Jeopardy champions? Cris is spelled without the H. Huh. I thought that was a feminine way of spelling Cris. One of the categories was, it's over. Maybe that's a sign. Again, we'll see if I'm right or wrong. Cris got the first daily double early in the round. He wagered $1,000, got it right, and went to $1,600. The Chicago Sky. Cris answered, what is WNBA? And right as Ken was about to rule him incorrect, Cris answered, what is basketball? This hairstyle used to cover up a bald spot often just draws more attention to it. The answer was comb over. I didn't know the comb over had a bad reputation. I thought it was common for younger men to have. I even had that style for a few years. Nearly cut from the film, this classic ballad won the Oscar for the best song of 1939. The answer was obviously Somewhere Over the Rainbow. A lot of Wizard of Oz questions recently. Meats and cheeses or carnitas are popular fillings for this 5-letter Mexican sandwich served on a crusty roll. The answer was, what is a torta? Now, what confuses me is there was another question when tortilla meant little cake, which would have meant torta was a cake. Cris was revealed to have been a poker player in the mini anecdotal interviews. Ken asked, now Johnny announced you as a customer success operations manager, but you have a second career, don't you, Cris? Cris answered, well, back in the halcyon days of the early 2000s, a lot of my friends and I were playing poker as people were wanting to do back then, and it turns out I was pretty good at it, and for a few years, I did it professionally. Ken asked, but you don't play anymore? Cris answered, I play a little bit, but certainly not the stakes I used to. Ken asked, is poker good Jeopardy preparation? Cris answered, oh, I think it can be, yes. I mean, it's a high-pressure game, yeah. Certainly true, it served James Holzhauer very well, of course. It's a high-pressure game, a lot of money at stake. As Ken said this, Cris told him that's certainly true. Ken ends by saying, yeah, certainly it served James Holzhauer very well, of course. This will be important for much later. Pam entered the first round winning $4,800. David was in third place at $2,000, and Cris was in late at $6,800. I noticed the second and third place score added to the leader score again. That seems to be a theme in David's run. He got both daily doubles. Cris got the first daily double in Double Jeopardy early again, wagered $7,000, got it right, and went to $15,400. Look at those scores. The Lord tells him to have his people borrow jewels from their neighbors. Good luck getting them back after the Exodus Egyptians. After David answered, "Who is Moses?" Ken told him, "Yes, this time you beat Pam to the Bible question." Pam got the second daily double in Double Jeopardy, wagered $4,000, got it right, and went to $11,600. In 1924, Clarence Darrow gave a long speech against capital punishment, asking for leniency for this pair. The answer was, "Who are Leopold and Loeb?" Clarence Darrow is also John Scope's defense attorney in the Scopes trial. That name stuck, so I looked him up out of boredom and would have got this correct too. They ran out of time in Double Jeopardy. They barely missed the last question too. Pam was in second place at $14,000 even. David was a distant third at $4,000. Sorry, David. And Cris was in late at $29,800. The final Jeopardy category was before they were authors. The question was, while working for a British naval intelligence during World War II, he was codenamed 17F. My initial guess was T.S. Eliot until I remembered he died in 1965, meaning if he lived a long life, his career must have begun even before World War I. I just couldn't think of any other British authors whose careers began in the 1950s. The answer was Ian Fleming, creator of 007 James Bond. That's correct. The last time James Bond was the answer in Final Jeopardy was on Enter He's fifth game. David and Pam answered correctly. I guess Ken knew David would lose since he told him, "It's been great having you with us this week." When David wagered $3, Ken told him, "A big wager." Goodbye, David. At least he got it right, though. Speaking of big wagers, Pam almost risked it all, taking her to $27,995. Cris answered Orwell, risked $221 and went down to $29,579. Since the scores are so close, fans were suggesting Pam should be in the second chance tournament, the second time a contestant named Pam would qualify. Seems like women named Pam always do well on Jeopardy. This would also be the second time a close game for the loss of a Tournament of Champions qualifier is in the second chance tournament. The first was Jessica Stevens. David won 4 games and has a good chance to be in the Tournament of Champions. Here's the part where I give my final review. To quote Ken, "Now don't get me wrong, 4 wins as a Jeopardy contestant is an amazing achievement. It's huge." Ken Jennings' instruction was, "Now don't get me wrong, 4 wins as a contestant is an amazing achievement. It's huge." And to give David credit, he made 3 of his games runaways. He was a really great player. However, he did have chances to do high wagers and didn't go for it. His first 2 Final Jeopardy bets were zeros and in total bet $3,005 on all his Final Jeopardy rounds. That's where I was concerned for David. As I already mentioned, all I had to take was for another game to not be a runaway and he'd lose. Now that it's season 39, I can't ask the usual, how would he do against Matt and Amy? Though I am wondering how he'd play against Luigi de Guzman in next year's tournament. He still had a good run. 4 days and $78,098 is not something to be disappointed in. Congratulations to David. Ken Jennings' introduction to the following game was, we wrapped up the week on Friday with a poker player defeating a priest. New champion Cris Pannullo bet big on a daily double in Double Jeopardy, pushing his lead to a position that 4-day champion David Sibley just couldn't catch. Will he ante up for the victory again today, or will it be Scott or Jenny who go all in for the win? And as always, thank you for watching.